Hey guys, it's Kevin again, and this is going to be my review for The Flash, Season 1, Episode 5, Plastique. And this episode, once again, another amazing episode. The Flash really is just getting better and better, better and better every single episode. I'm loving this show, and I love this episode. I thought it was definitely very good. And it was probably the best episode of the season, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the episode with Felicity. I still really enjoyed it. But I thought this episode was 10 times better than that because this episode had a lot going on in it. We had a huge twist with Harrison this episode, which I definitely really enjoyed. There was some really cool plots with Iris and everything. But let's just get to it because overall, I thought this was just a great episode. So I love the way the episode starts. You know, the past few episodes have really just started with Barry just having fun and basically just trying to be, you know, just a normal person, and he's enjoying some time out with his friends. He's continuing to pine over Iris, and is still wishing that one day soon their friendship could turn into something more. And, you know, it makes sense why he wants that to happen. So Cisco and Caitlin are waiting for their drinks, but when Barry brings them over, he downs them to all to show them that he isn't getting drunk. He, you know, basically because of the whole outbreak that happened, because he's a metahuman, and because of how fast he does not feel anything. You know, when he just takes a sip of alcohol, he feels nothing. So I thought that was definitely very interesting that they showed that, and I definitely thought that was a very interesting twist. You know, Iris is very happy that he's brought Cisco and Caitlin over, and it seems just like everything's okay and everything. And somewhere in Central City, a security guard is shocked when a female rushes out of a building, a bomb then explodes, and all the partygoers dismember to hit their own station. The thing I love about this episode, though, is that this girl is not a villain. She's not the villain of the episode. She is just a metahuman. That's all she is. She is not a villain in any way, shape, or form, which I definitely, personally, really enjoyed. I like that this girl was not a bad person. She was just a metahuman that really just didn't know how to control her powers, and I thought that was definitely really cool. So the Flash arrives, you know, Barry arrives, and he sees a man on a scaffold, and he's in danger, and he asks how fast he needs to run up the side of the building, and the reply is simply as fast as he can, and he rushes up to the side of the building. These were awesome effects, ultimately saving the worker's life, and as Barry and Joe survey the damage, things aren't adding up. They do have the description of the woman who's suspected to be the bomber, and in order to find out which file was taken from from the building, Barry used his super speed to read through all of it, because they need to find out, you know, who did this and everything. That's very important that they find out, and, basically, I thought that was very interesting. So General, Eiling introduced himself to Joe and demands all of the information they have. He tells Joe that the woman is one of theirs. She is a soldier, and Joe is forced to hand over all the material he has, and Barry pulls a page out of the, before the soldiers can take everything, so that he can have his team look into it. So Joe's upset, because he hears that Iris was at the site of the bombing, because basically now Iris knows that, you know, of course Joe knows that Barry exists. However, he tries to persuade her otherwise and fails, because their deal, of course, was that he would not, you know, be upset with him for being the Flash or anything. He would not be mad at him for that or anything if he would not get Iris involved, and Iris wouldn't be involved. That was basically what their whole plan there was. So, you know, basically Barry has to try to keep that secret, and I thought that was definitely very interesting, and I really enjoyed that plot in this episode, definitely. So meanwhile, Harrison is telling Barry that he knows General Eiling, and I'm like, you know, how do we know that, how does he know him? So, of course, everything that Harrison says is very, very shady. We know that Harrison is hiding something, and that's one of the things I love about his characters. You never really know where his character is going, and you never really know when to trust him, you know, when he's actually telling the truth, and I thought that was interesting that he said that, and I was interested in seeing how they actually do know each other. So, basically, the woman is identified as Bet Sans Suki. When the Flash approaches her, she touches him and then warns him to take his suit off, because if he doesn't, she's going to end up destroying it. He hurries away and loses the suit, and it explodes, and that was huge. So Suki is also known as Plastique, and she is a creation of Eiling's experimentation with his soldiers, and after the incident, Barry turns without the suit, and I love Cisco's reaction. He's just like, you burned my suit. And Barry's like, I'm sorry about that. And he's like, but you burned my suit. And Caitlin's like, oh, relax. You have a million other suits. I thought that was great. And I love that Cisco really is just a very comedic character. I definitely really like that about Cisco. Yes, he has had some dramatic material, but in the long run, Cisco is a comedic character here. You know, he's the one that gives the heroic names to each one of the metahumans. I definitely really enjoy that. You know, he gives the name Plastique to, Bet. So I really enjoyed that. So Barry was in the middle of giving him all the information to his team when Harrison comes up and explains that Plastic is a metahuman. You know, they basically find that out right away because, you know, his suit exploded. When she touched it, it exploded. And I thought that was definitely very cool. I definitely enjoyed that. And what I really like about her, as I said, is that she is a threat, but she's not a villain. So Joe joins the team. They all discuss a strategy on how to find Suki before she causes more harm. So Joe pulls Barry to side and begs him to convince Iris to stop writing about the streak. So he rushes out to try to convince her, but she's very combative and about the entire subject, and Iris can tell that the bombardment is not just about the hero not existing, but something else. She can tell that it's not just about that because she's pretty much just like, well, why wouldn't he care? Because Barry is, you know, such a genius and everything. He's pretty much a nerd, so if he were to, you know, she would probably think that he would be into that, and she doesn't really understand why he doesn't really support that, and it does make sense, definitely. So, it definitely is not working, and he then receives a call from the team to get to Suki before Eiling does, and Suki approaches, Bet approaches the doctor that created her, and Eiling arrives as well. However, before Eiling can get to her, Barry does and whisks her away to try to help figure out what happened to her. So, Harrison explains to Bet what happened to her, and she then explains that she had an accident while serving overseas, and the shrapnel pieces ripped through her, and the particles inside of her helped her form into what she is today. So I thought that was really interesting. So basically, Caitlin's helping Bet with a wound. She can see that she has a bullet hole right through her arm, and, she's like, oh, I don't care, but she helps her out with that. And I thought it was interesting that they actually are going to help this woman. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So she ends up discovering that there's actually a tracking device where she was hurt, and they just then, Bet arrives to greet Harrison. And the two have a very interesting conversation. I was kind of wondering, why are they having such an interesting conversation here? And she's demanding to have, Eiling is demanding to have Bet turned over to him, and basically, Bet and the team are long gone before Eiling can find them, because they don't want him to find them, obviously. So Cisco coins, he then, names her the Plastic, which I thought was funny, and she asks Barry about the help he received, and Barry tells her the extent of his ability so far, and that he always wanted to help people, and now that Barry has his powers, he's able to help. So, Iris continues to be a thorn in Joe and Barry's side as she now decides to put her name on the articles, making herself a target for any of many foes of the Flash, which I understand why they're upset about this, because this could make her a target, definitely, and people, and the metahumans, the bad ones, will go after her, and they don't want that to happen because Joe doesn't want anything bad to happen to his daughter, obviously. So, once Barry's informed by Joe, he visits Iris as the Flash. Basically, this is what he plans to do, and it looks like the two are going to have a very, it seems like they're going to have a very interesting conversation. So he does a little showing off for Iris before asking him to meet her on the roof, and he's using a voice system, which I thought he would because, Oliver does that. So I thought it was cool that Barry's also going to do that. And she asks him where he's from, and he denies her of any answers, and he begs her to stop writing about him, but she tells him his own story. Well, Barry's story, she basically tells him Barry's story, and of course she doesn't realize she's actually talking to Barry. It seemed very much like a Spider-Man moment. The moment where Peter Parker in the first Spider-Man goes to Mary Jane, and she doesn't realize it's, really Spider-Man. It seemed very much like that in this scene, and I definitely really enjoyed that. Even though this is DC and that's Marvel, it's fine because they're both superheroes, and I thought that was actually very well done. I really appreciated that. I definitely really appreciated that. So that was probably definitely one of my favorite scenes in the episode, actually. I enjoyed that a lot. And Iris tells the Flash that he is proof that Barry isn't crazy and asks him to prove it, and the conversation concludes with him telling Iris how lucky he is. Barry is very lucky if you think about it in many ways. So Caitlin has found the shrapnel that has merged with Bet's DNA, and Harrison says that there is no way to fix it, and Bet is very emotional, and Barry asks what now, and when Barry asks for her to join the team, they don't share the same sentiment, and I understand why they don't want her to join the team, because she is a threat, pretty much because anything she touches can explode, so because of that, they're very worried that if she ends up, joining the team, then it's not going to end up well in the end, which I think is definitely very interesting, and I really enjoy that. So Barry appears to them by asking them why they saved him if they didn't think they could help the metahumans, and Joe and Barry have a chat about Iris's writing and the reason for it. And the way into the chat, Joe alludes to Barry, and I personally really love this scene. I thought this was just great what we found out here. I thought this was great. He knows that Barry is in love with Iris, and it looks like Joe actually wants the two of them to be together. It does definitely make sense why he wants to them to be together. He raised Barry like his son, Iris is his daughter. It just makes sense, why he wants them to be together. The two of them work well together, and I could definitely see that happening, and I understand why he wants them to be together. I could definitely see that, and I think they do have those two definitely do have some genuine chemistry. I've said this from the beginning, that they have genuine chemistry, so I like that, Joe wants the two of them to be together. So Harrison clearly lies to Bet when he tells her the same accident that changed her put him in the wheelchair, which, of course, we know he's not actually in the wheelchair, and he urges her to do what it takes to get back her life or the answers to what happens, and his word seems to try to persuade her to kill Eiling so that she can have closure with him. So Harrison's evil nature is showing itself once again, which is, it's still very interesting. And I think that definitely is really cool because we don't know too much about him. We don't really know what's going on with him. And we know pretty much all he's saying are lies. Anytime he mentions his wheelchair, it is a lie. He's not actually in that wheelchair. And it's just more and more interesting as it goes on. I love that about his character. So Barry returns and asks Harrison where Bet is, but doesn't receive a clear answer. And we know where she is. Harrison sent her to kill, Harrison sent her to kill Eiling. That's where she is. So, basically, we see that, she leaves for the general's head, and she tries blowing him up, but even after the Flash arrives, they need him to get there in time. She's going to surrender, which draws him out in the open, but even after Barry arrives, Eiling shoots her in the chest, and she dies, and her body begins glowing. She's going to explode, and soon, Barry must run her body far away as fast as possible, and the only safe place is the nearby bay. But before this happens, and I thought this was very interesting, she tells him something very interesting. She is about to tell him something very interesting about Harrison, something very important, and then she just dies. Now, I understand it was kind of a cop-out, but I was fine with that personally because I was really into this episode, and I really liked the way that was done. I'm like, oh my god, why'd you have to do that to me? Because now I want to know, what she was going to tell Barry, because I'm very interested in seeing what was going to happen there. And, basically, Cisco surmises that if he runs fast enough, Barry can also run on water. We find that out in this episode, and I thought that was interesting. So, running Bet out into the open ocean, he drops her body into the water before she detonates because this girl's going to explode in a few minutes. And I thought that was interesting because I honestly thought that she was going to join their team. I thought that that's where they were heading with this, and I thought that that's what was going to happen here. But it appears that, no, that's not what's going to happen here. She's not going to join their team. So he returns to shore, and he sees that the mushroom cloud that Bet's body left behind, and basically she's dead. So, General Eiling covers up the explosion to the media, saying there was a military test to press that he failed Bet. Barry goes to see Iris at her home, because he really wanted to help Bet. He wanted her to be a part of the team, but now he knows that she's dead and it doesn't work, so Barry is unloading as much grief as he can without compromising his identity, but he squeezes the conversation into how much worse it would be to lose a family member, and he begs her again to stop covering the streak, and Iris asks why he's giving up on tracking the impossible, and Barry says that he's just over it. And I really like what he said here. I actually thought that he was going to legitimately tell Iris in this scene. Just the way this scene was playing out, it seemed like that is what he was going to do. It seemed like he was going to tell Iris, I'm the Flash. That's what it seemed like he was going to do, but of course, if he did that, he'd have Joe on his ass, and Joe would be pissed at him if he did that. And as I said before, it is going to get to him. The pressure is definitely going to get to him. but I definitely thought that he was like this close to telling Iris, definitely in this episode, like this close. So he basically tells her that he's just over it, and he talks about how, you know, his father and everything, what happened with his father, he's over that, and basically she can get over this. And I thought that was interesting, because if you think about it, that is true, because in the beginning of the season, his main concern was finding his father's killer, and now he's not so interested in that. Now he just wants to be a hero and help everyone, save everyone. So Iris says her interest in the Flash is beyond Barry's concerns now, and he's very deflated, and Barry says that it's best that they don't see each other for a while, and that definitely is very sad, but it really is the best thing for Barry and Iris right now, because it protects Iris's safety, and also protects Barry, because if they're away, then it's fine, and everything's going to be good there, and I think it's best that they are away. I agree with Barry that they need to be apart for a little bit. So they end up ending the episode, minus the post-credit scene, which we'll definitely talk about, which is huge. They end up ending it just like it started, with them going to the bar. He retreats to the bar, and Cisco and Caitlin meet him there, and Caitlin gives Barry a special 500 proof shot of alcohol that she made herself, which gives Barry the 5-second buzz he needs. And he's like, oh, that's not gonna work, but it ends up working, and then it just goes away eventually. And I love that they're just like, it's temporary. So I thought that was funny. And Barry's enjoying the rest of his night with his friends, while Iris bemoans her broken friendship with Barry. And I really like the narration that Barry says at the end of this episode. He talks about how, you know, you're not always going to have friends that you have forever, but what always gets to you is the grief and how you left it with that person. I agree with that. I definitely agree with what he's saying, is that what really leaves with you is the pain of losing them, and how you lost them, and how you're not as close to them. And it really goes with how Iris and Barry are being, because him being the Flash is tearing their friendship apart, which is definitely very sad, especially because he wants to have a genuine relationship with her, and he can't have a relationship with her if the Flash is going to get in the way. So that's obviously a problem. So the episode ends with another Harrison cliffhanger, and I thought this was probably the best cliffhanger yet. I love this. I thought this was amazing. Because Eiling visits Harrison at Star Labs, and he tells Harrison that he knows that Harrison's particle accelerator, the metahuman rise, and the Flash and, Bet included, but Harrison threatens to blackmail the General for his former illegal experiments. So I was like, what are we talking about here? And we basically see a flashback to 5 years ago, and we find out that these two have worked together. And basically we see a younger Eiling and the General about over cruelly experimenting on a test subject, and Harrison says that the test on the subject must stop. And the test subject is a gorilla with a name none other than Grood. So Eiling forces to leave Grood alone, but Harrison tells his pet gorilla that he has much bigger plans for the primate, who will one day become the Flash's deadliest rogues. So that was an awesome way to end the episode, because now we know that Harrison is going to be an antagonist. He is not a good guy, and he's going to end up betraying him. He is. I mean, whatever ends up happening, Harrison is going to betray him now, and I love the way at the end of the episode. I know some people have not been so, into the idea of them doing these cliffhangers at the end of every episode, but I personally really like it because it gets you so pumped up for the next episode, just like this episode did. And this was by far the best episode of the season, but let's talk about a few things, because there are a few things I do want to cover, and I do want to talk about. So, first of all, Iris and Barry, I really do feel bad for Iris and Barry. He has to keep that friendship gone for a little bit, but I think in the long run, this is going to be the best thing for them. I do think they are going to resolve this, but not for a while. I think this is going to be one of those things where they are apart for a little while, but they are going to fix this because they can, and they're going to find a way to fix this, and I definitely am looking forward to seeing if they're going to be able to. I don't know. We'll have to see what ends up happening there. I am also looking forward to seeing what's going to happen with Harrison. Obviously, he's working against Barry. And I did find out who the gorilla is, because I'm on comicbooks.com. They talked about who it was. Basically, apparently the actor that played Harrison actually tweeted about, the possibility of Gorilla Grood coming onto the show. And apparently he is one of Barry Allen's most deadliest enemies, which I'm really looking forward to. And I definitely am really looking forward to seeing what kind of, problems Gorilla Grood is going to put Barry into, because that's going to be very cool to see as well. I also really like the stuff we got with, you know, the main plot of of this episode with Plastique. I really liked her character. I really feel bad for Barry, though, because, again, he can't save everyone, and I'm interested in seeing what's going to happen there. Do you think Joe really does support Iris and Barry? He seems to be more into the idea of Iris and Barry than he is with Eddie and Iris, which I think is interesting because Barry and Eddie are both police partners, and, you know, Eddie's working with him, and also Barry's working with him. I think he just has more of an attachment to Barry than he does with Eddie. Eddie, he doesn't really have much of an attachment with, if you think about it. I mean, he kind of does, but if you want to talk about who he has more of an attachment with, Eddie is definitely, you know, Barry's definitely a person he has a more emotional attachment with. So I understand why he trusts Barry more than he does with Eddie. So I think that's also very interesting. And I guess my only other question is, what else happened between Harrison and General Eiling? Why are they working together? Why'd they stop working together? We don't really know. Clearly, there's something that they're doing. You know, they're clearly working together now, and he's obviously upset with Harrison about what he did. So that's interesting. And also, did Plastique know? Do you think that she actually knew about this? Because she was going to tell Barry, I think probably about what Harrison was going to do to him, that he was going to release this gorilla. So I kind of feel like Bet knew. I feel like that's what she was going to tell Barry, and that she kind of already knew what Eiling was planning to do to her. So I thought that was definitely very interesting, and I definitely really enjoyed that. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. I thought this was another solid episode. Definitely loved it. Probably the best episode of the season. And I will see you guys in my next review, which will be my review for tonight's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I am so pumped for, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.